Morning.
Good morning, Deborah. It's morning where you are. It's actually afternoon where I am now. So
Oh, yes, it's true.
we're just chilling out, aren't we?
Yes, we're chilling out, as the sign behind me says, the chill zone.
We're chilling out with Deborah today.
You got it.
Well, Deborah told me just a moment ago that she has been making the impossible possible even today. Deborah, you live in Colorado. What part of Colorado are you in?
Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs. Okay.
Mhm.
So Deborah, and I have tried to connect and do this before, but we had some technical difficulties. And so Deborah went out of her way and went to the chill zone in order to make today's conversation possible.
That's right.
What else are you making possible in your life right now?
Oh my gosh. There are so many things that I'm making possible because I say I'm making them possible. There are so many things that are happening in people's lives these days, as we both know. And I'm so thankful, so grateful for the training that I have because I don't let things stop me. And I know there's a lot of hopelessness going around in the world right now because of COVID and the political situation and people at odds with each other. And I teach people to overcome the impossible. And that's my firm belief that if I have positive beliefs and I can get through my negative emotions about things, that I can overcome things that look like that you just can't break through that obstacle. So I'm all of the mind of going around it, go to the right, to the left, over it, under it, through it, whatever you need to do, but not to let it stop you.
Nice. So I mentioned in the description for today's conversation something that you've mentioned and told me about in the past, and that is an auto accident that you were involved in some time ago.
Right.
If you would indulge us and help us understand what happened there. So let's go back in time. You were roughly how old when this happened?
I was 28 years old.
28 years old. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I know you were an opera singer at one time. Were you actively an opera singer at that time, or what was going on in your life at that time?
Well, I kind of always did some opera on the side, but yes, I was actually working on the grounds of the Air Force Academy. And so my life was great. I was single. I was having a lot of fun. I was in great physical and mental shape. And then I was in that car accident, and that changed my life in seconds. And as all of the doctors—
Can you pause right there? So, and I don't want to like bring up grim details or anything, but what was the nature of the accident that you were in?
Yes, I had a severe traumatic head injury and also lots of spinal damage and lots and lots of pain. So I couldn't really sit comfortably or stand or lie down, or I just couldn't get into any situation. I was always in pain. It was, according to the doctors, the worst kind of pain you can have because it was severe, and then also it was unrelenting. So between those two things, I wore a TENS unit for a long time. Well, not for a long time, just for a while. If you know what that is, it's supposed to you put electrodes on your points of pain, and they're supposed to cut the signals of pain so the brain doesn't read it as pain. But it actually really almost never worked. And then my head injury was so severe that I went to multiple doctors, and they said it was impossible to cure. And they're the ones, because I'd been going to so many doctors because I was in such awful shape. Finally, I had a couple of doctors come to me and say, you know, don't spend more of your money on the medical profession. We do not have the answers. Your injuries are far too severe. And then I had two doctors who said, you know, we like you, we want to help you, but we cannot. So please go start searching in the alternative areas and see if you can find some answers. And when you find the answers, come back and tell us.
Wow.
We do have some other people that are having major problems that the medical profession just can't help at this point in time. And
wow.
yeah,
So the doctor, the traditional medicine people were actually encouraging you to go look elsewhere in order to find the solutions.
They were at wit's end.
Wow. That's unusual. And I go back in time, you know, some of the things that I've dealt with, and the traditional medical field has had their traditions for quite some time, and they're pretty well entrenched. So
Right.
it's interesting that the people that you were seeing were open to other possibilities.
Well, I think they were open because they were at wit's end and they were good doctors. They really wanted to help and they knew they couldn't. And this happened in 1979. In 1979, they knew a lot less about the brain function than they do now. And so they just simply couldn't help a lot of people. I'm sure they did help some people, but not with someone with those types of severe injuries.
So one of the things you mentioned in the message that you sent me yesterday was that what happened with you, this was before the idea of neuroplasticity had developed.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that means and why that would be significant in your story?
Yeah, yes, thanks for asking. That's very significant because that was most of the reason why they didn't think they could help me was because at the time it was believed that the brain could not regenerate at all. That went against all of the previous medical science up to that time. And so they just thought it was an impossible situation. And again, what happened was I searched and searched and searched and finally found some ways that were starting to help my own head injury, and I was getting out of that head injury. And suddenly I realized, wow, that was all wrong. All of the science had to be wrong because my brain was regenerating against all odds. And then we finally started telling other people, well, if, you know, because people would start coming and they would say they had a concussion and can you help? And I would say, well, the science doesn't support it, but I can tell you what happened to me. And then they would come through and they would get help because I ended up, you know, opening a center finally because my brain was regenerating. And then because of my brain and what we knew, and we were already helping other people to come back, we found out that, well, actually I started talking to doctors in this area and everything, and I kept saying, well, you know, we're finding that the brain can regenerate. And they thought, oh my gosh, you know, what planet is she from? You know? But eventually one of the doctors that worked in my center was one of the ones that was one of the main researchers on the NFL football studies group. And they finally proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the brain could regenerate. And so that changed everything, all of the sports protocols, all of those things changed dramatically because of that. So it's now saving a lot of lives, saving, you know, not just life and death, but people's brains so that they can live better lives, so that they don't have repeated concussions, you know. So I'm very proud of that, even though I won't get credit for it. I'm very proud of it anyway. But that now is called neuroplasticity. So we were doing it about 15, maybe 15 years ahead of the curve, just because I was desperate to find a way back. And, somehow all of that came together. I just didn't give up and never really, I guess I didn't expect to find the answers, but I had to find the answers,
Yeah.
because I was that desperate. So
it's amazing what we can find when we set out to find it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That when we go to the traditional sources, they may come up a little short sometimes, and we have to look to alternative resources in order to see what else is possible.
Right. Yeah. And I believe that if we keep in the game and we keep playing all out and looking and looking and looking, and then change our beliefs to something positive, that sometimes we'll find it that maybe the answer was there all along. It was just in a different place. And we hadn't looked there because we gave up too soon.
If you're able to not just stop where everybody else has stopped and to keep looking, then oftentimes the answers are there. We just have to look in unusual places, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. I had a client. She was an older lady, and she was having really difficult problems with her eyesight. And she had it all tested out, and she finally was told by a really, really good doctor that she really needed a surgery. But at the time, the doctor was on the East Coast and she was in between coasts. And so the doctor that she needed was far, far away, and she didn't have the resources to get to that doctor. And so I kept helping her with being resourceful, having good, positive states of mind. And I thought it was really interesting because, the doctor actually ended up there were two doctors in the world that were specialists in this type of surgery. And one of those doctors moved to her city within, like, maybe, I don't know, I lose track of time, but maybe a couple of months or something.
Wow.
So, I really so believe that anything is possible as long as we keep it right up here.
Yes. So would you say that that's a key point in the work that you do, holding on to the possibility in the face of what may seem impossible?
I would say yes. Yes, definitely. And I think it's more important now than ever before, perhaps, because of all that's going on in the world and all of the people who are, seem to be pretty hopeless and everything. I'm not patting myself on the back, but when COVID and all of that happened, I had some moments, like I'm sure everybody else did, but I kept changing my thoughts. I kept getting through my own fears and disbelief and trauma over the situation and depression and all of those things, because I know how to do that energetically. It's really fast work. And so it helps me to get into a resourceful state. And then I can start thinking and changing my beliefs to, okay, everything's going to work out. I'm going to be fine. My family's going to be fine. My business will be fine. Whatever positive beliefs that I put in here. And I have to say, I think that, not that it's over, I get it, but I really believe that I am and have felt a lot more resourceful than a lot of other people. And I know that the people that I'm working with also have reported to me that they're now feeling much more resourceful and like, oh yeah, there are possibilities in the world. Yes, their businesses can still flourish, no matter what the circumstances, as long as they can keep it right up here.
Hmm.
The other thing is when we let fear and depression and all those things get into our way, it actually sort of defeats what we can see in the world. So if there are opportunities in the world that are sitting right in front of us, we can't even really see them. I'll never forget this because it was the first time it happened to me. I used to have an office where I was surrounded by books, like thousands, probably hundreds or thousands of books. And I had this gentleman that was coming to me in that office as a client, and we had several sessions already. And one day I did a session for him, and it was like someone just removed the cloak from his eyes. And he looked around and he said, wow, I've never noticed all these books before. What a great office, you know?
Just did some redecorating just like that, right?
Yeah, but I was stunned. I almost fell on the floor. I was so shocked, you know? But now I've seen it over and over and over. And I have clients tell me repeatedly that until they did a certain process with me, or they opened their minds to certain things or changed their beliefs, they didn't realize that there was this business sitting right in front of them, but they didn't see it as an opportunity, or they didn't take the opportunity.
Right.
So it happens over and over again, too often for me to dismiss. So that's another reason I believe in all of this so much.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
interesting how when we open our eyes, so to speak, to the books around us or whatever it may be, the businesses, the opportunities around us, what there is already in our presence that we may have just been overlooking in the past, right?
Right.
And one of the things that as you're sharing, I'm thinking about is how vital this is, not just for those people who had traumatic injuries or, face health issues or whatever, but for all of us as entrepreneurs, one of the things I firmly believe is that we are constantly in need of upgrading the systems that we have, right? Whether that be the business systems we have or the system that we have, running inside.
Well said, Steve.
That, just by kind of doing and like this morning, I woke up and my phone, and I don't very often see this happen, but it gave me some notifications that I had about 17 apps that I needed to update. And so I updated them all, but I'm realizing, there are probably apps inside this device that, we need to be updating as well.
Well said. Very well said.
That if we keep using the same old system, the same old hardware, same old software, then it's not going to work as well. We're not going to be able to compete as well, offer as much value to our clients, our audiences, our communities, as we would if we were to update the systems that we've got running inside.
Yeah, I would say kind of to tag on to that, but just say it in a different way. If something isn't working, we might want to change something, or if something could work better, we might want to change something.
Sure.
Even if someone else says it's impossible,
Yeah.
Everybody is always doing the impossible. Funny thing, right?
That's a great line.
I like that Toyota slogan, start your impossible today. I think they came out with that like the last Super Bowl or something, and it just like, oh yes, that is right on.
Start your impossible today.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because there are always the naysayers, right? And I get it. We try to be practical and everything, but there's that other side where if we can be open to what's possible, then someone's always doing it.
Yeah, I came across something recently where someone was challenging the validity of something because it came from their imagination.
Oh,
And I asked, well, why is that a problem? Because, oftentimes, and I'm remembering a quote, one of my favorite quotes, but I don't remember it exactly, but Albert Einstein said something along the lines of, that logic is, we confuse the role, the order of logic and imagination, right? That, we treat logic as the master and imagination as a slave, as I remember the quote going, when it really should be the other way around, that we, let imagination be the master and logic be the slave to make that imagination reality, right?
yeah. Yeah, he believed exactly the opposite. And look at what a genius he was.
Right. Well, I think about other people, Steve Jobs and Walt Disney, and,
Right, exactly.
honestly, just even you with talking about, that you imagined something when the doctors were saying you're never going to get better, you imagined something different. You said, you know what, I'm going to find a way to improve, to get better.
Right. And, I have to go back to that all the time, because when someone says, look at the research isn't there. Well, the research was not there for that to happen, not at all. And so, the research is often proven wrong. And I think that's something that people forget especially when they're just like into research. And I get it, research is important, but someone has to have this free thinking to be able to create the next research, the next breakthrough.
Right.
And have to have that creativity of mind and that impossibility thinking. And I'm getting chills as I'm saying this, but I think we
You're in the chill zone, so.
Thank you, Steve. That's perfect. Yes, but I get chills when I think, wow, yeah, this is it. This is really what it's about. One of the next great frontiers is the brain, right?
Yes.
And if we can release the brain's power, because I've seen people, oh my gosh, people just change dramatically when they suddenly realize that the power is here. Obviously I believe in God and all of that too, but I believe we're supposed to really finesse our inner power also, and really seek within, because our bodies and brains are always trying to give us information. And when we figure out that information, we can get much more whole in our lives. And we can be, I think, much greater in terms of contributions to the world.
Yes.
And someone asked me yesterday, what's your first agenda when you are in business? Is it money? Is it whatever it is? And I said, no, it's to help people. I believe that I'm in this world to contribute.
Yes.
To people. And I believe we're all in this world to contribute to people. And it's just, what is that contribution? And are we staying open, upgrading our apps? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I loved it. I love it. Can I use that? Upgrading our internal apps so that we are not only up with the current situation, but beyond the current situation. So we can be, change makers in the world. we're needed more now than ever, 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 ever before. And I think
Absolutely.
we're being called to make the impossible possible, and to create something better for people.
Absolutely. I'm reminded of a couple of things. One, I was in a doctor's office seeing a doctor who was filling in for my regular doctor, and I saw a pamphlet on the desk, the little table in the office, and it was on yoga, and I mentioned something about that to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh yeah, we're really supporting that now because the research is supporting it." It's like, so now that the research supports it, now it's okay, even though this has been something that's been practiced for thousands of years, and thousands of people, probably millions of people, can attest to the value of it, right?
Yeah.
So our research doesn't always precede the value of things that are out there. So if we, going back to the Einstein quote, if we wait for the research to prove things out before we follow our imagination, follow the possibilities, then the impossibility will remain impossible, right? Because we haven't challenged it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, and also again, that it sort of goes back to the power of beliefs. um, I think it's Roger Bannister that broke the 4-minute mile.
Right.
And he, it was impossible before that happened. And then the year after that, I don't know if you know, but something like 50 people did the same. They did the same thing. Because
Right.
guess what? The only thing that changed was they thought it was possible.
Right. Yes.
Right? So there are always there's always a leader or some leaders that are making things possible for the rest of the people. And those are the impossible thinkers and possibility thinkers. Possibility thinkers, sorry. Thinking that, knowing that not everything is impossible, and looking for the good in everything. And I think that even in this situation that we find ourselves in these days, there is much good coming out of it if we will only see it.
Yes.
And it's already, of course, changing a lot of things, and will be changing a lot more things. And of course, we know that pretty much everybody these days is traumatized. Talk about, people in trauma, because that's part of what I do. But is there a silver lining? I believe there is. I believe a lot of more people are opening their eyes to seeing things in a different way, and being open, maybe not because they have chosen to be open, because they have to be open.
Mm.
You know, that's kind of sad that that's maybe the way it happened, but it's also could be viewed as something positive, because I think people have realized that the old ways of thinking don't always work as well as they wish they had. And then maybe some of these new ways of working, of thinking or looking at things, could actually bring them much more joy and happiness and motivation and productivity, and more of the good things that they've been seeking in life anyway.
Absolutely. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, how much different your life is because of the accident that you had, quite some time ago. You're doing, I'm sure, very different work than what you were doing at the time. And you've helped be a pioneer this idea about the mind being plastic, uh, that it's adaptable, that just because it's wired a certain way because of injury or birth or whatever, it doesn't have to remain in that same configuration, that we can change how we show up in the world in order to lead, to pave the path for other people to follow, right?
That is very true. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess well, go ahead, because I'm not sure you were finished.
No, that's mainly all I had to say was, that sometimes life, the gifts of life show up as terrible accidents or, significant challenges, or, they show up in packaging that doesn't look like a gift. But when we unwrap them, then, we see what's inside. And
that's very true. And I also realized that I have a responsibility to myself and obviously to the rest of the world too. But part of that responsibility is to keep changing my own thoughts to the positive when they turn negative.
Yes.
Because each of us supposedly has 50 to 75,000 thoughts a day.
Right.
And for most people, I would say most of those are negative. Okay.
A lot of times, yes.
So we plus not only just not even mentioning subconscious thoughts, which we can talk about later, but those thoughts really can change our world. They can change the way we show up in the day, the way we see the day, the way people see us in the day, and so forth and so on. So I actively, every day, if I notice my thoughts going negative, I turn them around as quickly as I can. Now, to be real, that's often hard for people to do, but if the easiest way to do it certainly is to reduce the trauma and the fear and all of that, because you can do that really fast. And that's what I call some of my coaching rapid relief coaching, because in an hour someone can feel a whole lot better. Sure. But so I can help them to reduce a lot of those negative thoughts, and then it's easier for them to turn those little single thoughts around. The other thing is that if they have trauma or they have something that's happened in the past, it's not the past until they get rid of that trauma.
That's a good point.
So that will keep running in their lives at a subconscious level. And the subconscious is, they say, like 70% of your power. That's how you actually run. That creates the patterns. So let's say if someone has been, this just happened the other day, but if someone has, you okay?
All's good.
Yeah, okay, good. I get it. Okay. So, but if someone has, let's say, had something bad happen in their past, maybe they've been mistreated or something, or abused or something, and then they think they're past that and they're operating in the real world now, but they don't feel like they matter because someone ignored them, for instance. And that underscores everything that they do in life, from then on until they change that. So they may not speak up in a relationship, or they may not feel like they count in a relationship, or something like that. And then when we can change that for them, then that, if you want to think about it, that probably wipes out hundreds of thousands of negative thoughts, because that doesn't have to happen anymore.
Yeah.
Because they have a more positive belief about themselves. And the other thing is not even just the event that happens to you, but what meaning you give that event. So there's a lady I was talking to the other day, and she, you know, she had kind of been sort of mistreated, I would say, by her mother. And she decided in her mind that she didn't matter. Her mother never said that.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
see what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I know I've had some of that rewiring I've had to do.
Right.
You know, and it
So
makes me think about what we were talking about earlier, you know, that when you upgrade the system, if you keep using an old version of the software, you know, you're
right.
gonna have to, it lends to repeating the same things that you've done in the past, right? Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
haven't upgraded.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so the
Yes.
challenge is to keep that system up to date, right? Always be always do the upgrades.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then when it happens, it seems so magical because, like, in her life now, she's thinking, wow, oh wow, this relationship is so much better, and wow, this person is so much kinder. And but she knows that she did the work. She knows that things changed for her in that way. And so, you know, we can just make things a whole lot easier by doing those, upgrading those apps. Yeah. And it's easy to do. That's the thing. It's really easy. If you know how to do it, or you can get to a person who knows how to do it, who can, you know, change those beliefs quickly. And these days, you know, it can really happen in minutes, right? You
Yeah.
can change a belief. You might have to get through some negative stuff along the way, but it can really remove a lot of hurdles from your life, you know, and make it seem like the impossible is even more possible
Right.
faster. So,
Absolutely. Well, you know, without upgrading our systems, what now pales in comparison to the software that we have running on our phones, you
right.
know, it used to take up a whole floor in a building,
That's
you know, and now we've all got more power than that in the palm of our hands, you know,
yeah.
which I'm sure at the time would have seemed impossible,
Mm-hmm.
that we are where we are now because of that. The other thought that I had while you were talking earlier was that it's kind of like our thoughts are like our bloodstream, in that they get clogged up, right? It's kind of like,
Exactly.
you know, you get junk in there, what is it, plaque, or I am not a medical professional, but, and isn't it fortunate for you all, uh, but just the idea that, you know, that you get junk inside the veins and the arteries and so forth, and it causes problems. Similarly, you get junk stuck inside your thinking, and it causes similar problems. You know, the life doesn't work the way that it could because we haven't cleaned out our thinking arteries.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, as you know, I coach this all the time, and I can tell within an hour what a person's beliefs are usually,
Mm,
because it's in their conversation. Not all of the subconscious beliefs will show up, but a lot will.
sure.
And they don't even know it because, you know, they're just talking and having a great time, and that's wonderful. But you can, if you know what to look for, it's pretty obvious. And people can just look at their lives too and find out what's not working, and find what the belief is that's causing all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to stop and pay attention to what's going on. It's kind of like, I was doing a meditation yesterday where we did a body scan, you know, and it's like, you know, most of the time I'm not thinking about what's going on with my left kneecap, right? You know, but if I just pay some attention as to, you know, what is happening with my left kneecap, or, you know, my right elbow, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But just, you know, there's so much going on inside us, you know, physically, mentally, and otherwise, that if we don't bring attention to that area. It just happens without our awareness of it, right? And without really becoming aware of it, we can't change, we don't change what we could change, right? So part of what makes the impossible possible is just bringing attention to those things that we want to change.
Exactly. And also part of what I do is to teach people to pay attention, because their bodies are always trying to signal their discomfort, not so much what we think is happening. It's not the knee pain specifically as what we think it might be, as the knee pain might be getting our attention to ask certain questions of our bodies. And that's what I teach people to do also. There are certain questions to ask because our bodies are always trying to bring us to wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good at it. They're very wise, because they know how we operate, right?
Right.
And so like there's this one lady I've been working with, and she now knows that if her body just gets really, really cold sometimes, and that feeling of cold is not because it's cold outside or inside, it's just to bring her awareness to look at something, pay attention to something, find out what this is about. And more often than not, it is something at the subconscious level that is something that could be changed easily and quickly for her, that will make her life tremendously better. And she now gets that. So she knows that if she has certain signals, and that's part of what we do is teach people to kind of read the signals that their bodies have been giving them for a long time, because they can. And once they learn that, by golly, everything can change pretty quickly, and they can really feel a lot healthier and happier. And one of the things that I know she loves is she feels so much more powerful. It's that inner power, because she knows this part of her is so wise. It's so full of wisdom. And I think that's the way we were made. It's kind of like going to college and learning about marketing or something. Once we know how to use the tool, we can use the tool for our betterment.
Right.
But it makes you feel so much better because you start realizing, oh, my body, my brain, we are reading the world all the time, and we know how we're reacting, and we know if we're having fear or anxiety or depression, and we can give you this signal, and then you know what it is, and you can take care of it, and then we're all going to feel better and have a party and feel joy. That sounds funny, but it really is like that.
Absolutely. No, I'm laughing because it's true. I mean, you put it in a funny way, but I really like the idea, that if we pay attention to what's going on here, that we can go have that party, Go to the chill zone.
The chill zone. Yeah.
Well, Debera, thank you for your time and sharing your story and your heart and your wisdom.
Yes.
Before we go, where can people go in order to learn more about what we talked about today and how they can upgrade their software?
Thank you. One thing that I have out is a trauma healing guide, and it's free for people, and they can go to www.thetraumahealingcoach.com.
Okay.
That will give them a little bit of information. And by the way, trauma can usually, once they eradicate trauma, can usually get rid of procrastination, lack of motivation, lack of productivity, all kinds of things that people don't realize. It's kind of a little secret. But anyway, that, and then if they would like to get into my calendar, it's www.talkwithdebera.com, and that's Debera.
Okay.
And I'm going to start a Facebook group really soon. So
Well, thank you for being with us here today, Debera, in the Art of Entrepreneurship Facebook group, where, you know, we're having great conversations about how to make a bigger difference in the world.
Thank you so much, Steve. This was a real pleasure. It's always wonderful to talk to you. And to hear
Likewise.
about these upgraded apps. I love that.
Very good. Yes, we keep you upgrading the app. So stay current. Come visit us in the Art of Entrepreneurship group. Give Debera a call, talkwithdebera.com, and the traumahealingcoach.com. Is that?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And I will put the links to those in the comments.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.